The average touchdown time of all post-1950 recorded F5 tornadoes is a little after 4:30 p.m., where during most times of the year, they can be visibly seen well before sunset. Yet some of these tornadoes chose to ambush their unsuspecting victims at night without being caught red-handed during daylight. Two F5s, the Blackwell, Oklahoma and Udall, Kansas tornadoes of May 25, 1955, would strike after dark between 9:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m., claiming over 100 lives and injuring several hundred more. These tornadoes, while already despicable by nature, factored their time of day to increase the loss of life potentially even more, and are two of the latest time of day F5 tornadoes recorded since 1950 in U.S. history. And then an F5 hit Barneveld, Wisconsin. The last time I covered this tornado, I said that the Barneveld F5 tornado was one of the most evil tornadoes to have ever touched the ground. Back then, I never really looked far into why this was the case. It was just a hunch I had. After all, being hyperbolic about an F5 tornado isn't necessarily a bad thing, even if others may have been deadlier and costlier in comparison. But then I got looking through all 59 of these F5 tornadoes, analyzing the time each of these had touched down. Astonishingly, the Barneveld F5, based on the time of touchdown, is the latest nighttime F5 tornado to have ever touched the ground in U.S. history since 1950, having landed at 12:41 a.m. on June 8, 1984. This is a whopping 4 hours past the time of sunset during this time of year. In fact, the state of Wisconsin has the latest average F5 tornado touchdown time out of all U.S. states that have had at least one F5 tornado based on their initial time of touchdown, occurring at an average of 9:23 p.m., which during most times of the year, even during summer months, is near or after sunset. No other state average touchdown time even comes within the same galaxy as Wisconsin, with second place Nebraska trailing behind at 6:30 p.m. and third place Michigan over 3 hours earlier at 6:05 p.m. Of course, does this necessarily mean Wisconsin has the most late night or early morning tornadoes within its boundaries? Absolutely not. Tennessee leads the country with the most nighttime tornadoes. Nor does this mean that Wisconsin has had the most F5 tornadoes either. The Barneveld tornado is also a striking outlier statistically and skews Wisconsin's average F5 touchdown time significantly higher by over 3 hours, which, removing the Barneveld tornado's touchdown time, would tie the state with Michigan at 6:05 p.m. I know this may be statistical nonsense, but admittedly, I have a bias towards this tornado, and I think for good reason. Having lived near the small town most of my life, and even having family from Barneveld directly impacted by this tornado when it occurred, it continues to blow my mind that I have some relation to one of the most harrowing meteorological events in U.S. history. And now discovering how much more catastrophic this storm could have been based on the date and the time of day it happened compared to every other F5 tornado since 1950, I would argue that the Barneveld tornado should be regarded as one of the most significant tornadoes in U.S. history. Many Barneveld residents described June 7th, 1984 as very muggy and very windy. While it may have been beautiful to some, others felt like something was just off about it, an eerie, indescribable feeling. Whether they knew what was coming or not, Kansas and Nebraska were the midwives for the conception of warm, moist Gulf of Mexico air and cool, dry Canadian air that birthed supercells throughout the course of the day. Tornado watches issued by noon gave way to tornado warnings by night, with numerous supercell thunderstorms igniting across the Central Plains well into the afternoon. Even as the day had waned into the nightfall, humidity stayed very balmy, with dew points remaining in the upper 60s to low 70s in Wisconsin. This would become a disastrous recipe for the ensuing weather on its way to Barneveld. A tornado watch was issued for eastern Iowa, northwest Illinois, and south central Wisconsin by the Storm Prediction Center in Kansas City, Missouri. Favorable tornadic conditions crept into the upper Mississippi River Valley, and many people in Barneveld have already gone to bed, completely unaware of the horrors they were about to be facing in just a couple hours. The first tornado in Wisconsin touches down on 12:30 a.m. on June 8th in Belmont, doing F2 damage by destroying a barn, sheds, caving in a chimney on someone's house, and uprooting trees from the ground. But this tornado was only just beginning its reign of terror through southern Wisconsin, where after lifting for just a few miles outside of Mineral Point, this tornado would return to the ground as a quarter-mile F5 beast, 6 miles southwest of Barneveld. A bolt of lightning kills the power to Barneveld at 12:58 a.m. to prevent any warning of the tornado about to enter town. A tremendous clap of thunder awakens many residents of Barneveld from a deep sleep, and then a sudden halting silence ensues. And with little time to react, 250 to 300 mile per hour winds begin to rip apart the small town. Homes and businesses would be destroyed, cars tossed around like Hot Wheels, and trees stripped of their bark and torn off. But this tornado wasn't over, as it continued to the northeast, climbing the northwest corner of West Blue Mound. The tornado lit up the nighttime skies like a strobe light with its constant 200 lightning strikes per minute, and carved through the deeply dissected valleys through Vermont Township, destroying 24 homes until reaching Black Earth, where another 8 homes were devastated. The tornado continued northeast and reached the Columbia County border, where it rose from the ground back up into the skies, leaving a 36-mile-long path behind its way through the hilly driftless plateau west of Madison. The sun, somehow, some way, even after the mass extinction event upon the blistered Earth, still rose only a few hours later on June 8, 1984. Below the gray skies that obscured the warmth of the sun above them, a ravaged carcass of a small town lies in complete ruin. Barneveld, from the dust it was created, returned to all but just 10% of it once again. There were very few structures still standing in the village. Most homes were completely destroyed, if not swept away entirely. Only one out of the 18 businesses in town remained without being blown to bits. Defiantly, the Barneveld Water Tower, a recent addition to the town, remained fully intact and standing upright amongst the devastated village below. This water tower still stands today as an artifact of Barneveld's crippling past. A time clock belonging to Wright's Feed Service, which was destroyed in the tornado, remained in place after losing power from the tornado ripping through town, and frozen in time perpetually at 12:58 a.m. Debris had been scattered miles upon miles away, including many pieces of paper, mail, photos, and checks scattered across many lawns miles east of Barneveld. Even a gas canister belonging to Randy's Auto Service had been hurled a whopping 170 miles to the northeast in Green Bay. The Barneveld tornado arrived with absolutely no warning, even despite the tornado watch issued at 10:20 p.m. It was far too late by the time most people could have even been warned of the incoming tornado, as 9 people would lose their lives and 200 would be injured, which was over a third of the population of Barneveld. Even the supercell that birthed the tornado appeared to have no clear hook echo shape to indicate a tornado was on the ground. It started out as just this small little speck of dust that grew into this hideous, amalgamized blob with no definition. As soon as it hits Barneveld, it grows another arm like a shapeshifter, spawning the next round of F2 and F3 tornadoes to ravage the villages of DeForest, Rio, Cambria, and Marquezan deep into the early morning hours of June 8th. Just like the darkness it basked in, the tornado hid itself under the guise of an unsuspecting supercell as it ransacked Barneveld like a Trojan horse. No siren would have even been able to go off in the middle of the night, as the power had been killed to Barneveld just before entering town. As with the Colfax F5 that preceded the Barneveld tornado, no photographs or camera footage exists, and the funnel wasn't reported spotted until it reached Columbia County. There's no concrete proof of this, but according to a person who posted on the Forgotten Wisconsin State History page on Facebook, they mentioned that an Iowa County deputy had reported seeing the tornado near Ridgeway. After spotting this funnel, the deputy reportedly made a beeline east on US 18-151 towards Barneveld, trying to warn the public and order the sirens to go off. But he was supposedly too late, as the power had been cut off by the tornado before he made it. It isn't known who this man was, nor if this story is verifiable. The timeline of events during the early morning of June 8, 1984 via the National Weather Service in Madison have no indication that a funnel cloud was sighted by this Iowa County deputy, and nor was he mentioned in these reports either. Initial reports of downed trees in Barneveld around 12:55 a.m. were blamed by strong wind gusts, which were unknown of that a tornado had actually rolled through. The first indication of a tornado touchdown wouldn't be reported until 1:14 a.m. near Mazomanie, after the tornado had gone through Black Earth and around 20 minutes after cutting through Barneveld. I would like to believe this story, though, even if there's an implausibility about it. Maybe there's a chance it missed being reported to the National Weather Service, but we can't really say for sure. And even then, would this deputy's actions be all for naught with the sirens silenced by a rogue lightning strike? Trevor Simon, a survivor of the tornado, would carry with him one of the most tragic instances of loss amongst the Wisconsin F5 tornadoes. As the tornado rampaged through Barneveld, Trevor, who was just short of 2 years old, would be tossed 3 blocks away from his family's home on Swiss Lane, landing near the defunct railroad tracks now making up the Military Ridge State Trail. Incredibly, Trevor not only survived the impact of the fall, he miraculously avoided the 250 to 300 mile per hour winds of the tornado swirling lethal debris all around him. First responders from Barneveld and surrounding areas would soon discover the baby Trevor Simon, recognizing him as the son of one Bruce Simon, an ex-Air Force serviceman, nurse, and EMT from Barneveld who had trained many of them on the force. However, Bruce Simon, who was a wonderful person amongst the village of Barneveld, would not be assisting his distraught community that evening. Trevor's mother Jill, his older sister Cassie, and his father Bruce had all lost their lives to the Barneveld tornado that evening, and Trevor would be the sole survivor of the Simon family, becoming a T4 paraplegic and confined to a wheelchair. Trevor Simon, being less than 2 years old, prevented him from having any memories of not only his injuries during the tornado, but has no recollection of his own family that was taken away from him before he had the chance to remember anything about them. I can't even begin to imagine not having the ability to walk, as well as my own understanding of my immediate family be explained to me by other people who knew them. It honestly starts to hurt my head thinking about it. Trevor Simon wouldn't let his confinement to a wheelchair stop him from enjoying life. He would even play on a wheelchair basketball team. If I lost all 4 fingers on my left hand, whether I was very young or even today, there's no way I would even consider playing guitar, which is something that is a huge part of my life. He can also successfully hop 4 steps on a wheelchair without tipping over, which is incredibly skillful. And I can safely say that most people, including myself, would likely become an America's Funniest Home Videos clip very quickly if a camera were rolling. He even games it up on Twitch and streams gameplay of Forza and other racing games. If you like watching live streamers, go follow his Twitch account, Solitude, and subscribe to his YouTube channel, darn it. Thanks for letting me share your story, Trevor. I was very happy to see my original Barneveld tornado video had come to your attention. And in turn, I hope your story inspires many other people who get to hear about your experience and learn to make the best out of the cards they're dealt with in our daily lives. Life is a very precious thing that can be dramatically changed in moments, and we must not take our time we do have on this earth for granted. Madison, Wisconsin and Seattle, Washington are oddly similar in various ways. Both vote similarly, they're both built on an isthmus, and they both have some sort of prominent peak, whether a gigantic dormant volcano or just a very large hill, a long way in the distance from their respective cities. West Blue Mound, the most prominent bluff in southern Wisconsin located west of Madison, and the tallest point in the driftless area, was thought for many years impossible for a tornado to climb over. The Barneveld tornado dispelled this as a myth once and for all, carving a thick path of downed trees like a deforestation project through the northwest corner of Wisconsin's own Mount Rainier. Compared to the mountains of Washington state, our rolling driftless area plateau might seem like a joke to many familiar with the Cascade and Rocky Mountains. But there's still a beauty and charm that lies in this unglaciated region of the country, existing as an island of untampered land, rolling with hills amongst a sea of bland Midwest Corn Belt plains. As is the geography of Wisconsin overlooked, it bothers me that the Barneveld tornado is often treated the same. This was simultaneously the latest and earliest time occurring F5 tornado in recorded history between 1950 through today. I would go as far to dub the Barneveld tornado as literally the darkest F5 tornado of all time. Something insultingly poetic about this tornado is that velocity radar at the time was not being utilized as a way of tracking tornadoes. It wouldn't be for another 10 years in the 1990s that this would successfully be implemented for the first time by the National Weather Service in St. Louis. And the date the first time velocity radar was used, if you can believe this, was June 8th, 1994, 10 years after the Barneveld tornado. Maybe the National Weather Service could have seen this tornado coming had they had velocity radar back then. And maybe still the tornado sirens could have gone off in Barneveld before the power went out. We'll never truly know. After all, this Barneveld tornado was unlike any other F5 seen previously. Fortunately, Barneveld rebuilt their community once again. Everyone who lived through the tornado all shared the same trauma mutually, and it helped bring their small village back stronger than ever before, as a small growing suburb west of Madison, Wisconsin. As the tale of the Barneveld F5 tornado comes to a close, one more F5 tornado remains as a blight upon Wisconsin's meteorological history. Stay tuned for part 3 as we cover the F5 tornadoes of Wisconsin. Thank you for watching.